The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. ASU offers the only online undergraduate digital media literacy degree, teaching students how to recognize and combat inaccuracies on all platforms. They are using cutting-edge tools and tactics to separate fact from fiction in a digital world overloaded with misinformation. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Thalohungva. Here are the headlines from Indian Country Today. NASA is creating a program that will feature Native American cultures, and they're asking for help from tribal elders and educators. It's part of a $3.3 million program called Native Earth, Native Sky, and it will include science, technology, engineering, and math curriculum. NASA is partnering with the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Cherokee Nations to work with professors at Oklahoma State University to develop the curriculum. It will include words in each tribe's language and legends about the earth and the sky. The Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada says it needs more funding or it will collapse. The group, which represents thousands of Indigenous-led tourism operators, asked the government for more than $68 million to help boost tourism. That amount would have been covering 3 years. Instead, according to the Canadian press, only $2.4 million was allocated for this year. The association's chief executive says it isn't enough to provide help, and Keith Henry estimates a loss of 30 years of progress because of the pandemic. The overall budget promises $1 billion over 3 years, starting this fiscal year for the tourism industry. Henry remains hopeful the Canadian government will have a change of heart and increase funding for Indigenous tourism. A home built on the Canadian First Nations community wins a major award from the U.S. Department of Energy. Members of a design team at the University of Waterloo placed second at the 2020 Solar Decathlon Build Challenge. The award is for a net zero energy home on the Neashing-Miing Reserve near Wharton, Ontario. The home generates all of its energy needs through 37 solar panels on its roof. It also has smart plugs and thermostats to monitor and minimize its energy use. The result is a 4-bed, 2-bath bungalow, which is now home to a family of 5. The total cost of the home is $220,000. The project started in 2017 and was completed by the Chippewa of Nawash Unceded First Nation and Habitat for Humanity. April is Native Hawaiian Plant Month and celebrates the endangered flora of the Hawaiian Islands. Approximately 1,500 plant species are native to Hawaii, and nearly 90% are unique to the islands. According to the Kauai Invasive Species Committee, Hawaii makes up less than 1% of the U.S. landmass, yet it accounts for more than 40% of the nation's threatened and endangered plant species. Karina Dominguez has more.
Some conservationists call Hawaii the extinction and endangered species capital of the world.
I'm actually hunting in the places that are heavily disturbed with invasives.
Rick Barboza started growing native Hawaiian plants in 1999, and now he's the co-owner of the largest native Hawaiian plant nursery.
And if there's that one diamond in the rough native, and that's the material that I want to preserve, because throughout all of the adversity that it's been surrounded by, it's still there.
For the past 20 years, his company Huiku Maioliola has been helping native Hawaiian plants thrive through landscaping and habitat restorations. They match the flora they're planting to the surroundings, making sure the genetic makeup matches the existing native populations. Barboza says 20,000 plants from around the globe have been introduced in Hawaii over the last 200 years, and it's contributed to a disconnect between what is native Hawaiian and what isn't.
We embrace those plants because they're lay plants today, but all of those plants were introduced.
Many non-native plants were given Hawaiian names and have been embraced as native.
And that, to me, bothers me the most, because we get on everybody else's case for appropriating Hawaiian culture, yet we're doing it without even thinking about it.
Barboza measures his success by the return of animals once the native flora is reintroduced. In Phoenix, Karina Dominguez, Indian Country Today.
You can now find a teepee on one of the busiest streets in North Dakota's capital city. The teepee is in front of Bismarck High School, just north of downtown. Students from the school's Four Directions Club asked to learn how to set up a teepee. Melvin Miner and Brandon Ironhawk from United Tribes Technical College brought the poles and taught the students how to set it up. They also told them the history of the teepee. American Indians make up a large percentage of students at the school. Their curiosity has given teachers a great opportunity. Teachers have held math and science and also English classes in the teepee. Preschool and fourth grade classes have also had field trips to the teepee. The club's advisor says it took the students about an hour and a half to put up the teepee, and it will stay up through this weekend. And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Thalahungva. When we come back, the largest Native American youth organization celebrates 45 years.
Plus, the gift of politics, perseverance, and trees.
This is Indian Country Today.
Peggy Flanagan is Minnesota's 50th Lieutenant Governor. A member of the White Earth Band of Ojibwe, I interviewed her for the Thursday Newscast. Dalton Walker, a member of the Red Lake Band of Ojibwe from Minnesota, and ICT's Deputy Managing Editor, asked a few questions after I had completed my interview. I'm honored to share her response about her highest moment as Lieutenant Governor.
It's hard to say, and it's a little weird because the last 14 months have just felt like we are just responding over and over again to, crisis after crisis, and COVID has been, personally for me, has meant a lot of loss and sadness, but also determination to make sure that other families don't experience what my family experienced. But I have to say, there's two incidents that I can point to. The first was the signing of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Task Force bill that the governor signed, and we were surrounded by Native women and who had been working on that issue for a very long time. And I would say the other is when a year ago November, was able to go to the Shakopee, a year ago November was able to go to the Stillwater Correctional Facility and meet with a lot of the Native men who are incarcerated there, and have a round dance and bring a drum in for the first time in a long time, and just hear about their experiences. And start to develop a way to make sure that people can, participate in ceremony and do the things that they need to do for their spiritual health that will set them up in a good way after they leave. And a lot of that work had been started, and we had to put the brakes on because of COVID, but I am eager to get back to it. So those are two of the moments I think that are most impactful for me. And of course, just getting sworn in and being able to be sworn in by the first Native woman to serve on the Supreme Court in the state of Minnesota, surrounded by my husband and my mom and my dad, who is no longer with us, and my little girl, was a big moment. And I try to think back to that moment when things get really hard about the oath that I took, and the work that I need to do in a system that wasn't necessarily designed for me or for any of us. It's always the reminder to did you smudge today? Did you take a moment to just reflect and to express gratitude when sometimes it feels hard to come by? That has been really critical for me, even when I'm disconnected from community or family during the pandemic, that those are the practices that, even though we're physically separated, can keep us connected and together.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan of the White Earth Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota. North Dakota State Representative Ruth Buffalo of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation authored a bill that requires all North Dakota schools to teach Native American studies. This is significant because the state used to leave it up to school districts to decide what to teach about Native Americans. Now, it's a required subject. Its passage is a lesson in perseverance and listening.
after the 47-47 failed vote on the House floor, March 23rd, we spent about 2 straight hours listening and just really hearing out, from the prevailing side, those that voted against the bill. A lot of their concerns were in the language, and so but we also received a lot of really, really good responses. And so I think people are often fearful of what they don't know or what they don't quite understand initially. And so we're just excited that this is moving forward, and just really want to say thank you to everyone who came out and rallied behind this bill. So we're very grateful and thankful. Through this series of amendments, it was even split into 2 separate parts. A and B, because some of the legislators really favored more the 4th and 8th grade North Dakota Studies curriculum, which is already in existence and is already in law. And so they wanted to build off of that piece of legislature or piece of law. But the second part of the bill was focused more on US history and high school students. And the third part, section 3, has an effective date of 2025, and that is for graduation requirements. So the incoming freshmen this August, they will be the first cohort where it will be a graduation requirement for them. And so there was a little bit of confusion there on thinking that the overall bill will not take place or become law until 2025, but it becomes law August 1st. And so everything will go into effect this coming school year.
This was a long road for you. What was the key for success?
So many different groups came together throughout the state, former tribal council reps, current tribal council reps, and their families. And we also have here in Bismarck and in Fargo, they call them IPACs, Indigenous Parent Advisory Councils or committees, that through law, the Indian education programs, they are parent volunteers, and they are just very staunch advocates for their children in these school systems. So they have played a really important role in providing feedback in the earlier stages of feedback and input. And in the earlier stages of the bill drafting, I had reached out to different stakeholders from the different tribes. So there was a lot of communication through email and feedback. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody that has come forward. A lot of even the individuals that were a part of the putting together of the essential understandings, Native American essential understandings, they also provided feedback on the earlier bill drafts. Bismarck Public Schools, their IPAC, I know, really rallied hard to get a Indian education director. So a lot of the grassroots movements, the volunteer movement is also very important in this process. Now as a legislator, lawmaker, I'm so thankful for the amount of people who continue to come out and become educated on these processes and know that they belong in these spaces and their voice really does matter.
North Dakota Representative Ruth Buffalo. When we come back, Unity turns 45, and we celebrate Arbor Day. Unity turns 45 this year. United National Indian Tribal Youth began in 1976 in southwestern Oklahoma. J.R. Cook started with a handful of youth. It now has 325 local youth councils in 36 states. He retired in 2013. Joining us today is Unity's Executive Director, Mary Kim Titla.
It's quite amazing. We've had prominent people who have jobs now that are remarkable. And I'm just going to name a few. Chuske Spencer, the actor, and we're pretty proud of him for, of course, everyone knows him from the Twilight series. We have Arvo Mekinen, who is a U.S. attorney in Oklahoma, And also in Oklahoma, Dr. Daryl Meese Cherokee, who is a medical doctor and has his own family practice. We've had lots of tribal leaders. Temet Aguilar, who is chairman of the Pama Band of Luiseño Indians in California. Vivian Juan Saunders, who is in the Tanaotub Nation, also on her tribal council. So yes, we have an amazing alumni, Dr. Pearl Yellowman, who works for the Navajo Nation and has been a very prominent figure in their fight against COVID-19 this past year. Unity is magical, and I tell this story all the time. I tell people, you know, it's hard to describe unity because it's like going to Disneyland. You can talk to people all day long about Disneyland, but until they go there, they won't experience that magic. And that's exactly what unity is. It inspires hope and changes lives. And we have heard time and time again from people all over the country who say unity changed my life. And certainly it changed my life. I've come full circle. I was involved with unity as a young person and then went through the ranks of becoming an advisor and serving as a trustee on the Council of Trustees for Unity. And I never thought I'd be in this seat as executive director of Unity. So it's been an amazing journey. And I think, you know, what young people like best about Unity, and this is what I've heard, is the connections that they make at the activities that we host, the conferences, the mid-year and the national conferences. You know, we have some amazing speakers and we have activities for the youth, but in the end, it's all about making those connections. And so there's this huge network, as you mentioned, of youth councils all over the country. They learn from each other, they share with each other, and there's a lot of youth-led activities, and we pride ourselves in that because the youth get there, they take over. They are serving as the moderators, as the MCs, and they really are hands-on. So they're leading workshops, and they empower each other, really. So all we do is provide a platform and let their voices be heard. They have so many great ideas and solutions to issues and concerns that they have. Every year, the National Unity Council identifies top 10 issues in Indian country, and they take those issues and start to have these action planning meetings and decide how they're going to address them.
Mary Kim Titla, Executive Director of United National Indian Tribal Youth, on its 45th birthday. It's Arbor Day, a celebration of trees. Henry Red Cloud from the Ogallala Lakota Nation in South Dakota knows a thing or two about trees. This May, his crew will plant 35,000 trees.
Trees are so important that, you know, they do so much good things for us. Watershed, wildlife, you know, sanctuary, taking bad carbon, making good carbon. It's something that we all should be doing all the time. And this month, the Ann Arbor Day, we all should be planting maybe a dozen trees, you know, per family. So then we can start, you know, protecting, doing our part as human beings to ensure for, you know, future, you know, generations to have the quality air, water, and all the important things that we need to sustain ourselves. And a tree is small, but yet it's powerful. It's something that is good for all humanity, all living beings, animals, everybody. They sit there, they grow year after year. All of these trees that we grew so far and have out there in our reforestation program, long after I'm gone, the trees are still going to be there, and they'll start to reseed themselves, and you know, things are going to be good. Then I'm going to feel good. Once I leave, I know that I did my part. So it's very important that we all get out there and start to plant trees wherever that we can. Get our communities together, get our families together, and go out and plant a few trees.
Red Cloud Renewables also has taken on solar energy.
we're now working with over 60 tribes on their solar clean energy projects, creating multiple jobs, offsetting, carbon, lessening our carbon moccasin print, and creating ultimately, creating a sustainable life, coexisting with the earth again. Our base foundation as the Oglala Lakota, our language, our culture, our ceremony, our song, our dance is all based around Ampetui, the sun. So it's this new way of honoring the old way and then becoming sustainable, coexisting with the earth again. And so we had over 700 students come through our program since our existence. And so we're excitedly looking to the next coming years as everybody's aware, we need to be going to clean energy. Several weeks back, last month, we had the rolling blackouts. We got to start, thinking what we can do to start ensuring that this doesn't happen.
From Pine Ridge, Henry Red Cloud celebrating Arbor Day by planting trees. The Ojibwe are known for wild rice and maple syrup. ICT's national correspondent, Marionette Pember, reports from the Sugar Bush camp.
It takes about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup, or 8 pounds of maple sugar. Sap is very perishable and must be boiled soon after it's collected. Sugar bush, or Ishkagamizagan, is an intensive ephemeral activity that only lasts about 3 weeks per year. When tree buds begin to open, sugar bush is over. Traditionally, families camped out in the forest for days and weeks as they tapped trees and carried the fresh sap to containers where it was boiled over wood fires. Long ago, Ojibwe boiled the sap into sugar rather than syrup. Sugar is lighter and easier to store. Today, most Ojibwe make syrup in a long, hands-on process requiring constant attention to ensure the sap doesn't overboil or burn. People work into the night, keeping watch over the boiling sap. The sap becomes syrup once it reaches a sugar concentration of 66%. Most people use a hydrometer to test the syrup. Small amounts of butter may be periodically added to the syrup in order to keep it from foaming over. On this brisk spring morning, we find Mel Madej in his driveway overseeing the family's sap boiling operation. Lynn Madej Big Boy, director of Mashkazibi Youth Services for the Bad River Band, describes how her son Pierce led her family back to the Sugar Bush and how they began incorporating the tradition into youth programs.
And so when he was 13, my grandma had just passed away, and he wanted to bring our family back together again. And so we've been doing Sugar Bush since 2012, and it really has. And so now we do it with our youth program. Now that I'm in this position, we've done it at a community Sugar Bush, and we'll continue to grow that each year.
Participating in traditional Ojibwe subsistence activities such as Sugar Bush has the power to heal those who are struggling with problems such as addiction. It offers the sense of community, belonging, and reconnection with culture. How did our ancestors first figure out that sap could be boiled into sugar? Paul Demain, former editor of News from Indian Country and avid sugar busher, shares some of the original Ojibwe teachings.
We know that originally they said that a maple tree came and dripped out maple syrup. Essentially, Indigenous people, Anishinaabe, ended up lying underneath the tree and letting those trees drip into their mouth with pure maple syrup. And they gained weight and became basically under the influence of what they call the Wendigo influence, or the out of balance spirit, in a sense. So in other words, Winnebuju or the other money dues and spirits were saying, look at how lazy the Indians have become. They just lay there and let that sap flow into their mouths. And we need to do something about it. And so they did. And so between the Creator and other spirits, what they did is they thinned out the syrup to create maple sap. And therefore you got to work really hard to get at that delicious ingredient.
The sap has been boiling all day and into the evening as the Madej family prepares to finish this batch of syrup. carefully removing it from the fire and pouring it into containers.
There's nothing better than gathering the family up to sit around a campfire and relax a little bit and get out of the hectic pace of modern society and all the worries about COVID and everything else that's been going on. There's a great joy in just giving sugar cakes and maple syrup away, taking a gallon to the drum dance ceremony and giving it away in ceremonial, giving candy and stuff to your grandchildren and giving it to your grandparents and things like that. There's a great joy in giving these products away rather than just converting them for monetary value. But it is a medicine. Number one, it is a food and a medicine, just like most foods are medicines as well. And you see Indigenous people responding to that gift of medicine and that gift of food in a ceremonial way. So we put tobacco down, and at some point I spoke for the first medicine, the first drink, the first sap of the year, just to give thanks to the trees and say, hey man, this is wonderful, man. It's like unbelievable, a sweet, beautiful gift.
In Odena, Wisconsin, Marionette Pember for Indian Country Today.
For more news and updates on the web, go to IndianCountryToday.com. This weekend, plant a tree or hug a tree. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I'm Mark Trahant.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
Indian Country Today is produced at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
This is Indian Country Today.